still haven't uploaded a vlog I recorded on Thursday. It's Sunday today, so I kind of uploaded half of it while at the park, but I had to leave. So, and YouTube can be a bit funny. It doesn't just seem to be great with uploading when I haven't got great reception. So I intend to go to the park and upload both this vlog and the previous one. I managed to record a podcast episode just before I recorded this, and it was quite tough to record, just as my health is getting more challenging. It's affecting my capacity to be present and mindful. So on a Thursday, as far as I remember, it was a difficult time. I think I was talking about the reading and the recovery. So I've kind of sort of been doing that as best as I can, of just taking each day slow and trying to be mindful of just, when I'm pushing myself too much, or even more than that, when there's any sort of slight stress or effort, then I'm kind of in sort of recovery mode. I'm still in that place at the moment. I think there's been a little bit more stabilizing now. Then I think the time from Thursday to now, I'm still sort of recovering, but I feel like I've got a little bit of strength back, I think. But at the same time, I'm still very sort of fragile as well, so I've got to be just a little bit careful of not sort of pushing the envelope at all, and just remaining for a while at least as well. It's been maybe nice in some ways, where I've had coffee for the past couple of days, but it hasn't felt like a big deal, or I've not made it a big deal, and I just felt like having a cup this morning. I was feeling a bit tired. With that rough time on a Thursday, I kind of had, I think it was that night, or the night around those couple of nights where I had a really late night. I think it may have been Thursday. I had quite a late night, or it might have been the night before. And so it's nice, and there's almost a lightness around that. There's not. It doesn't seem like it's a problem. Like I don't intend to have coffee like too regularly, too often. Like perhaps, I'll sort of intentionally not have any for a few days, hopefully, with trying to get continuous work on my sleep. That will help. So it's definitely been healthy, or helpful, just to, in a sense, try and drop everything. So I did go back to the library, and I returned the other book I was reading and just got another one out that doesn't have a deadline, and it's nice because I've just been I think without the expectation and trying to not be hard on myself, I've just been reading a very small amount here or there. Like this morning, I may have only read like 10 pages in a really slow pace, and tried to be okay with that. I think there's maybe part of my personality or mine. It's always maybe measuring, always trying to say this is not good enough, and I need to be pushing myself more, and especially because of my writing as well. So there's a natural drive to want to read a lot, and that kind of kicks into gear. So one thing I found really tough is the dissociation. Overall, I found that maybe I'll write a note about that I can take to my doctor's appointment when the next one comes up. I did finally submit a request to do a doctor's appointment yesterday, so hopefully that will come up soon. And I've got a little note on my phone that I've sort of titled it doctor's appointment, so I can kind of put any changing symptoms in there that I can sort of bring up at the appointment. And dissociation seems to be getting worse, where I'm just sort of jumping into more daydreams and more narratives, and it can be quite tiring. Even when I was reading this morning, I'd be reading a sentence and a thought would come, and immediately I'll be sort of swept into a fantasy about, and there'll be a narrative, and there'll be and that's happening more and more, where it's becoming annoying, I'd say, as well, a bit. And it's confusing as well, because I find myself in it suddenly, and I have to almost step out of it and think, oh God, I've gone back into that again. And I'm sure it's a thing of trying to get comfort and trying to cope, and I think as my mind's becoming more difficult, then that's increasing. So in some ways it makes sense, where I'm trying to find some kind of almost medicine and peace and relief, and so that's just something to note that I wanted to sort of mention here. I think also it's tough sometimes to get validation from friends and family, because I've touched upon this many times before, because my health is changing, getting more severe. I almost want to try and communicate that to the friends and family I see, but often it doesn't get across that way, and it's of course it's so unreasonable to have sort of a friend or family member to understand the nuances of how things are changing for me. But yeah, I find that, and there's maybe a part of me that wants to be validated, and not in a sympathetic way to say, you're going through a hard time, but just maybe some understanding in how difficult things are becoming now, where it feels like the friends and family that I do see, my perception is that things have kind of paused, that they know that, okay, I'm going through some mental health stuff, but it feels like there's a gap between them understanding and knowing how severe it is, and that just because I seem okay sort of talking to them, but I find, I'm not sure if this is true, maybe this is true, there's some truth to this, where sort of mental health, a lot of it comes up when you're alone, a lot of the main symptoms, and there's a way of where you can not be fake, but I guess when you're in company, in a social sort of setting, whether getting coffee with somebody or going for a walk with somebody, there's an element where you're doing something, and you may not necessarily seem really unwell then. So sometimes you can almost give off that vibe that you're struggling, but you're also okay. And so yeah, the last few days have just been really trying to be in recovery mode. I've been watching, I did actually end up watching some Netflix and series, and I'm going to try and continue this as well, because even though I've labelled this a recovery stage, it may be that this might be, for the time being, needed, for a longer duration. I'm not sure how long, but there's been kind of several sort of impacts I've dealt with recently, with stuff with my mum again, which I can't remember if I talked about in Thursday's vlog. I might have done. But there's been some sort of indirect communication I've come across that I sort of had to sort of deal with my reactions to that, and of course the reading and the writing, the amount of how can I word it? The effort of work. I can't seem to put words together right now. So even like this symptom, this is often, it's very much unknown when I'm kind of in a social setting. But here when I'm recording, and I'm probably most raw, and it's a bit more of an accurate read, I guess, on things, or an accurate sort of display or showing, revealing of stuff. So I came across an article. Don't know where it was from actually. Don't know if it was on the news or something else that I may have. It's strange, even though I do my best not to directly look at the news, but it somehow filters in some ways. Whether occasionally I'll be on Twitter, sort of looking at, I follow the holistic psychologist on there, who some of when I'm able to sort of read up, or absorb some of that stuff, it can sometimes help give me a bit of shape around things. And there was this young girl who committed. Actually, I won't say committed. There's another article I read where there's history about that phrasing, committed, like it's a wrongful thing, but which really makes sense as well. It's funny how it can becomes automated without realising the meaning of what we're saying. But perhaps I could say took their lives, or don't know if that's any better, but and they were the girl was 14, I think, at the time, and that just sort of I've been reflecting on that a little bit, of that, how what that person must have been going through. And I think, like I mentioned before, with their family, they were kind of, that they didn't really have any idea of how much she was suffering, and she had like a alternative Twitter account, and she was sort of tweeting raw stuff on there, like, I don't want to live anymore, and and often there can be such a gap between people who really know what's going on with you, and it's not easy to, especially in that stage, I can really just empathise with her. I think she was reaching out on Twitter to like famous sort of people she admired, like singers, or famous media people, YouTube people, and of course she wasn't getting a response back, because you rarely do with people who have so many followers on that stuff, but she was actually asking for help from those people. And I think the article was talking about how, young people need to kind of reach out to adults or to people in positions who can respond and give them that help. And yeah, it's just sort of just thinking about that person's life, and yeah, it's just yeah, not sure what I wanted to say about it really, but maybe just that story was touching in some way. Of cause I'm sure there'll be people like myself or lots of people in that similar position. She was able to connect with somebody who empathized with her. I think that would have meant a lot to her to hear that, so she wouldn't have had to explain herself in lots of detail and try and convince somebody of what she's going through. But there'll be someone on the other side who they just have to nod and I really feel that, I understand. And I think that's probably what she needed at the time. So yeah, just touching back on the doctor's surgery stuff, I think that's something I'm going to try and note down, because I feel like with these sort of regular checkups, I really want to try and sort of in some ways actively engage in them, not for them just to be a passive appointment. There may be appointments where there's not much I need to say, but when there's things like this I'm noticing, I think it's important for me to write it down, because often it can just get blended into everything, and when the appointment comes around, I won't have much to say. So it's important to sort of notice these little changes before it becomes the norm again, the new norm in that sense of severity. So yeah, at the moment I've got a nice book to read I can sort of dip into, which I plan to do today as well, just maybe little bursts of reading. And when I did play some poker, but I entered some poker tournaments and I ended up getting quite anxious in them, so that was a bit I kind of wish I wouldn't get as anxious. So I kind of said to myself that it's probably best not to do any more poker tournaments, that maybe I can enter some games where there isn't that pressure of staying in there. You can just play, like with the reading, I kind of dip in, play a few hands if I want to, and then I can dip out again. But there was a nice element of being in a tournament, a thrill of progress and achievement, but it just came with a large dose of anxiety. So as the tournament progressed as well, so it's important for me to recognise that, even though it's part of me enjoyed the tournament aspect of it, but it doesn't feel like it's worth the anxiety, and I've got to really be aware of that as well. And because I think I was getting anxious before, but I wasn't dialing into it. I was just, maybe part of me wanted a bit of pain, perhaps. It wanted a bit of, I think in some ways it wanted that. And there's a part of me that still does as well. It wants to kind of enter a tournament and withstand a bit of the anxiety and pain. And I think overall it's not good for me to do that. So, it's good to be aware of that stuff. Food stuff's it was challenging yesterday. I went into a shop and I ended up getting 2 pizzas, but it wasn't like a binge because I didn't eat both of them. I think yesterday I actually involuntarily fasted until like 4 in the afternoon. I just didn't get a chance to really eat something. I saw a family member yesterday and went to get coffee, and they brought along somebody as well, so there's 3 of us. And I noted at the time when I was in that shop yesterday, I thought it was just too hard for me to. I guess it brings up the complexity of binge eating and a bit of OCD as well, of when I see something and that kind of obsessiveness with that. So I kind of did a fast yesterday, then I had some pizza as a kind of meal, and then the other pizza I've got, it's got a date of like 4th of December, so I'm going to kind of wait until then, which is another kind of 6-7 days. So it's not completely, yes, I've sort of indulged, but also there's an element of a little bit of control as well. And I know I can't be perfect with eating stuff, and I've done, if I doing like doing like it's hard for me to acknowledge positive, I've done well perhaps in really eliminating like chocolate and crisps and the times I have had chocolate, it's been really rarely, like once a week I've had a tiny bit, and so it feels like maybe I can keep that as it is. And even with crisps, perhaps I can treat myself if I want to have it, not as an uncontrollable urge. So it feels like any kind of pizzas, that one thing I'm getting a bit of sort of, it's almost in some ways almost a bit of a substance for me, but it's kind of, there's an element of that being controlled, or substance isn't the right word, outlet would be a better word, like a release valve a little bit, and I'm sort of tempering that as much as I can. So in the old days I would have eaten all of that within a day or two. I would have cooked both of them and just, it would have been it's really hard to remember a lot of how much I did back in those days of binge eating and that kind of stuff. But my IBS has been playing up a lot as well. That's something I need to a week or two ago I got some maybe more than a couple of weeks, I got some sort of these little mini drinks that are good for the gut, that have healthy bacteria, and I've just not been able to get any more. I've not been to a big supermarket since then, and the smaller one I went to last week, I think at some point, there wasn't any there when I looked for them, so I've kind of noticed that, and I feel like bloated this morning, because I had, after the pizza, later in the evening I had some, like a healthier meal, but I think the lentils I had, it didn't have a good effect on me. I just felt very bloated and full up, and I still feel that way now. So I haven't eaten anything. I've just had a cup of coffee this morning, and maybe I can see how I feel in the afternoon, perhaps. So it's strange. So things feel severe, but there's also an element, a tiny bit of stability there as well. I'm doing my best to stabilise things. So I think I'm going to try and do a little bit of writing stuff and just take that same approach as I do with the reading and just dip into it. Maybe watching stuff's been a good thing for me, a grounding thing. So maybe I'll try and watch something. I've got a couple of movies downloaded on Netflix, so maybe I can see if I want to watch some tonight, and maybe nice to play a bit of poker as well. Just maybe play a few hands here. And I like the flexibility of that, where you can dip into a game and then just dip out again. It's very, I could take advantage of that. And maybe that will be enough. I don't have to kind of find myself in tournaments and stuff again. One thing to note as well, it's an awareness that I'm sort of isolating more, especially from friends, and it's just, it doesn't feel like there's a choice in the matter. Like there's not enough energy in me to, or how can I word it accurately? It's almost too painful to engage with friends. Like it's too painful to hold conversations, or even through text as well. It's just such a heavy sort of effort, and these are like friends who are really understanding of my health and who are very. So it's a bit disheartening, that is, where it just. But I'm glad I'm not feeling. I'm feeling a bit guilty, but a large part, a lot less than I would be, because it doesn't feel like it's a choice. I don't really. It's not like I'm trying to be a bad friend. It's just my health is that severe, and it's just, and it makes sense as well, because people who are quite severely unwell, lots of things fall away, especially like friendships, where it requires, of course, two people to make that effort and to do that, and it just feels like there isn't the capacity in me to really, and especially when there's challenges trying to like travel to see that friend. It's not like I live close by, and I've even got a couple of friends who live close by, and still it's too much for me, and it's hard for me to make fully sense of it as well. I can only go by sort of the actions where I haven't reached out to them, and sort of track back from that side of things and understand, okay, there must be a reason. It's still hard for me to really fully grasp in the tangled mess of the mind. So yeah, maybe it's good for me not to dwell on that too much, but just to be aware of that's the situation right now, and maybe to not be hard on myself about that. So try and think, okay, my health is severe, and perhaps I can't worry about, like, I don't feel like the people will feel like I'm a bad person. They know I'm going through a difficult time, and if we do drift for a bit or don't get in touch for a while, then I feel like there'll be an understanding a little bit for that, I hope. So yeah, it'd be good for me to get some fresh air, maybe do a few laps around the park, or just try and upload this stuff first, actually, before I do that. And just take things again slow today, and maybe I'll see, hopefully, if I can check in a bit more regularly during this sort of recovery stage, and just to keep tabs on myself, and to kind of, this is a good way of doing it. Feels like there's something else that I wanted to say, but it's not coming to my mind. No, I think that's it for today. Yeah.